Well, the class that impacted me the most in seminary was one I took near the end of my seminary studies. It was called Mark's Gospel and a First World Theology of Justice and Peace, taught by an adjunct professor named Ched Myers. Never heard about him, but sounded like an intriguing title. Figured I'd take it as one of my elective courses and found his reading of Mark's Gospel transformative. That his understanding of Jesus transgressing boundaries at that time, of hearing it as a story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 being a symbolic statement of God's abundance shown to all, that no one should have insufficient amount to get by on, that there's such a thing as too much and too little. He also brought us into Acts chapter 2 and the idea of the early church being one where goods are distributed such that no one had too little, nor did anyone have too much. It really brought the scriptures alive. I'd been working at a homeless shelter around that time, and so was wrestling with some of these questions of disparity. After that class, met with Ched and became affected enough by what he said that even sought him out for advice. And he encouraged me, when I finished my seminary studies, to do something unusual and get a trade rather than heading into a church. And he gave me 3 great reasons. He said, let's say the church kicks you out for, let's just say, preaching the gospel. You got a trade, you got a backup plan. He also argued you'd learn a lot about the 9-to-5 work life many people in the world face today. And thirdly, he thought it would really help me as a pastor grow in character. Well, it sounded like crazy advice, but like a true word, it really struck a chord, and went out after seminary and learned how to be an automobile mechanic and did that for several years. After that, was able to return to ministry, but what I'm still so grateful for is the opportunity to see the world through the lens of being under an automobile, of recognizing that issues of wage and labor really matter, and that the perspective when you're looking at things from the place of someone who works on the automobile line, it impacts one's viewpoint. After that time, I ended up in pastoral ministry when I've served church often in youth ministry, doing a lot with mission trips, and during those times, really being impacted when we'd visit areas of Honduras or parts of Mexico, and being impacted by the faith of the people we'd visit, and coming home troubled by that discrepancy. And since that time, finding in Scripture this idea of Sabbath, this idea that there is such a thing as too much work, too much wealth, too much of even a good thing, and that our God instead provides abundance and enough for all if we're willing to participate in God's activity of distributing and allowing that to be shared among all. One of the ways to practice Sabbath, I believe, is accompanying people, and particularly accompanying workers in their struggle for a just wage, and that's, again, one of the practices that I understand to be rooted to Sabbath, at least that Sabbath understanding that's presented in Exodus, among other stories, in the manna in the wilderness story, when God provides manna from heaven and the people of God are instructed to gather not too much but enough to meet their needs. And when they gather too much, the story goes, it begins to rot. That is, there is this important ethic of gathering enough and of a God that offers abundance, and then seeking to live into that as disciples.